The day my life imploded started like any other Tuesday. I woke up, got ready for my last few high school classes, and daydreamed about college, specifically about Cornell. My acceptance letter was still pinned to my bulletin board, a constant reminder of the future I'd worked so hard for. Downstairs, the smell of burnt toast usually meant Dad was on breakfast duty, but today the air was thick with tension, not just charred bread. Morning, I mumbled, sliding into a chair at the kitchen table. The air was thick, not with the usual aroma of Dad's slightly too crispy toast, but with a palpable tension. My parents and my older sister Chloe were clustered around the table, their faces a disturbing shade of gray. Mom was twisting a dish towel in her hands, a nervous habit she usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences or Chloe's particularly disastrous business updates. Dad, normally jovial, stared grimly at a stack of papers. And Chloe. Chloe, the self-proclaimed queen of manifesting abundance, looked like she'd just manifested a tax audit. "Morning, sweetie," Mom replied, her voice a little too high-pitched. "Sit down. We need to talk." We need to talk. 4 words that could send shivers down the spine of any teenager. My carefully constructed plans for the day? Finish the history essay, work on the scholarship application, maybe even sneak in a quick episode of my favorite show? Evaporated. I sat, the warmth of the tea suddenly insufficient against the chill creeping up my spine. What's wrong? Chloe, usually the first to jump into any conversation, especially if it involved her, remained stubbornly silent. She stared at the table, tracing patterns on the wood with her perfectly manicured fingernail. That, in itself, was a major warning sign. Chloe never chipped her manicure. Dad cleared his throat, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the tense silence. "Sarah, you know how much your mother and I love you, right?" My internal alarm bells went from a gentle chime to a full-blown siren. This was the classic preamble to devastating news. I gripped my mug tighter. Yes. And you know that we've always been incredibly supportive of Chloe's entrepreneurial endeavors. He paused, searching for the right words, a clear indication that the endeavors were not, in fact, going well. Chloe's latest entrepreneurial endeavor was a lifestyle brand called CloGlow. It consisted primarily of overpriced candles and bath bombs, each adorned with inspirational quotes that were more cringeworthy than uplifting. Think Live, Laugh, Lather, printed on a lavender-scented soap that cost more than my weekly allowance. The whole thing was, to put it mildly, a financial black hole. "Yes," I said again, my voice shrinking. I could feel the blood draining from my face. I had a terrible, sinking feeling I knew exactly where this was going. My carefully curated future, the one that revolved around the acceptance letter from Cornell University proudly displayed on my bedroom bulletin board, was about to be detonated. "Well," Mom took over, her voice trembling slightly. "Chloe's business. It's hit a bit of a snag, a rather significant snag." "What kind of snag?" I asked, even though I already knew. "The snag was probably the size of the Grand Canyon." "She needs capital," Dad said, the word sounding foreign and uncomfortable on his tongue. "An investment. To expand her product line." "Expand?" I echoed, my voice laced with disbelief. "Expand what? The collection of half-melted candles in the garage?" Chloe finally looked up, her eyes flashing with anger. "They're artisan candles, Sarah. And it's not just candles anymore. I'm branching out into aromatherapy diffusers. It's a whole wellness experience." "Wellness experience?" I repeated, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. "Chloe, you're selling overpriced air fresheners." "They're more than that," she insisted, her voice rising. "They're about creating a vibe, a sanctuary, they're about emptying our bank accounts," I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. "Sarah!" Mom scolded, but her voice lacked conviction. Dad sighed, running a hand through his already thinning hair. "Sarah, we understand your concerns. But Chloe really believes in this. She thinks this new line of diffusers will be the breakthrough she needs." "And what if it's not?" I challenged, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. What if it's just another snag? Another investment that goes down the drain? "It won't be," Chloe said, her voice regaining some of its usual confidence. I've done my research. I've got a marketing plan. I even have a potential influencer lined up. This is going to be huge. I can feel it. You feel it? I stared at her, incredulous. Chloe, you felt that the bath bombs shaped like miniature Buddhas were going to be a hit, and we ended up donating them to the local homeless shelter. That was different, she protested. This is a whole new level. And what does this whole new level require? I asked, turning back to my parents. The question was rhetorical. I knew the answer. I just needed to hear them say it. Dad took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. Sarah, we've been discussing it, and we've decided to use your college fund for Chloe's business. The words landed like a physical blow. The air whooshed out of my lungs. The room tilted. My carefully constructed world, the one with Cornell at its center, shattered into a million pieces. You... what? I managed to whisper, the words barely audible. It's just temporary, Chloe chimed in, her voice a desperate plea. I'll pay it back, I swear. As soon as the diffusers take off, I'll pay back every penny with interest. Cornell, I said, the name a lifeline I was desperately clinging to. My tuition, my dorm, everything. We'll figure it out, honey, Mom said, her voice choked with tears. There are other options. Student loans, scholarships. You're so bright, Sarah. You'll find a way. But I knew, deep down, I knew there wouldn't be a way. Cornell wasn't just a school. It was a dream, a carefully cultivated aspiration that required years of planning and, crucially, a significant financial investment. An investment that was now being poured into Chloe's latest doomed-to-fail venture. You can't do this, I said, my voice rising again, fueled by a rising tide of anger and despair. This is my money. I earned it. I got the grades. I wrote the essays. I got accepted into Cornell. Sarah, please, Dad pleaded, his voice weary. Chloe needs this. This is her dream, her chance to be something. The implication was clear. My dream, my education, my future was somehow less important than Chloe's chance to be something. My academic achievements, my years of hard work were apparently worth less than a batch of overpriced diffusers. And what about my dream? I shouted, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Does that mean nothing? Am I just supposed to give up on everything I've worked for? Don't be dramatic, Sarah, Chloe said, her voice sharp and dismissive. It's not the end of the world. You can go to community college for a year, then transfer. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I stared at her, my voice laced with disbelief. It's my life, Chloe. It's my future. You don't get to decide that it's not a big deal. Enough! Dad's voice boomed, silencing us both. He stood up, his face a mask of weary resignation. The decision is made, Sarah. We're a family and we support each other. Right now, Chloe needs our support. That's all there is to it. Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. A family that prioritized one child's fleeting whims over another's carefully planned future. A family that valued a failing business over a hard-earned education. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the tiled floor. I looked at my parents, their faces etched with guilt and a desperate hope that I would somehow understand, that I would somehow accept this blatant injustice. I looked at Chloe, her expression a mixture of triumph and defiance. Fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the turmoil raging inside me. You want to support Chloe? Go ahead. But don't expect me to be part of this family anymore. I turned and walked away, leaving the burnt toast, the shattered dreams, and the remnants of my so-called family behind. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked. I walked out of the house, out of their lives, and into a future that was suddenly, terrifyingly uncertain. But even in that uncertainty, there was a flicker of defiance, a spark of determination. They might have taken my college fund, but they wouldn't take my spirit. I would find a way. I would rebuild. I would succeed. And I would never, ever forget what they had done. I walked until my legs burned and my lungs ached. I walked until the houses of our quiet suburban street gave way to the bustling streets of the city. I walked until I had no destination, no plan, just a raw, burning anger and a deep, aching sense of betrayal. I ended up at Liam's apartment, the small, cramped space he shared with two other roommates. Liam, my best friend since kindergarten, the one person who had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. He took one look at my tear streaked face, my red rimmed eyes, and my trembling hands, and without a word, he pulled me into a hug that said more than any words could. A hug that said, I'm here. I understand. I've got you. And in that hug, I finally let go. The tears I'd been holding back came pouring out, a torrent of grief, anger, and disbelief. I sobbed until my chest ached, until my throat was raw, until I had no tears left. What happened? Liam asked gently once the storm had subsided. He led me to the worn-out sofa, handing me a box of tissues. I told him everything, every word, every detail, every agonizing moment of that conversation in the kitchen. I told him about the burnt toast, the nervous hand-wringing, the desperate pleas, and the cold, hard truth of their decision. Liam listened patiently, his expression growing darker with each word. He didn't interrupt, he didn't offer empty platitudes, he just listened. And that was exactly what I needed. They can't do that, he said, his voice tight with anger once I'd finished. That's your money, Sarah. It's legally yours. I know, I whispered, the fight draining out of me. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. But what can I do? Sue my own parents? The thought was both horrifying and strangely appealing. Horrifying because it meant tearing apart what was left of my family. Appealing because it meant fighting back, refusing to be a victim. Liam was silent for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. He was always the practical one, the strategist, the one who could find a solution to any problem. You can sue them, he finally said, his voice firm. You have a legal right to that money. It was set aside for your education, in your name. They can't just take it. But family, I said, the word feeling heavy and complicated. Family doesn't steal from family, Sarah, Liam said, his voice unwavering. Family doesn't sacrifice one child's future for another's failing business. Family doesn't do what they did to you. His words resonated with a painful truth. The idealized image of family I'd always held had been shattered. My parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. I don't know, Liam, I said, my voice filled with doubt. It's just so much. Suing my own parents. It feels wrong. It is wrong, Sarah, Liam said, his voice softening. But what they did was wrong, too. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to fight for your future. He reached out and took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I'll be with you every step of the way. You're not alone in this. His words, his unwavering support, gave me the courage I needed. He was right. I couldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't let them steal my dream. Okay, I said, my voice stronger now. Let's do it. Let's fight back. And so began the long, arduous journey of reclaiming what was rightfully mine. The journey that would lead me down a path I never could have imagined. A path that would ultimately lead me to a position of power. A position where I could finally exact my revenge. But that was years away. Right now, all I had was a burning anger, a loyal friend, and a desperate hope that justice would prevail. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time since that morning in the kitchen, I felt a flicker of hope, a spark of determination. I would not be defeated. I would not be silenced. I would fight, and I would win, even if it meant tearing my family apart. The decision was made, and I would live with the consequences, whatever they may be. The first step, finding a lawyer, a good lawyer. The next few months were a brutal crash course in the realities of the legal system, adult responsibilities, and the profound loneliness of being estranged from your family. Liam's apartment became my temporary refuge, his couch my bed. His two roommates, initially wary of the sudden addition to their cramped living space, eventually warmed up to me, offering a mixture of awkward sympathy and surprisingly helpful advice, mostly gleaned from legal dramas they'd binge-watched. Finding a lawyer willing to take on my case, suing my own parents for the return of my college fund, proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. Many were hesitant, citing the messy family dynamics and the potential for negative publicity. Others quoted exorbitant fees that were far beyond my meager resources. It's a tough case, kid, One lawyer, a gruff, balding man with a perpetually cynical expression, told me. Family law is messy, and even if you win, collecting the money, that's a whole other battle. But it's my money, I insisted, my voice trembling with frustration. It's in a trust, specifically for my education. They can't just take it. He sighed, leaning back in his creaky leather chair. They can, and they did. The question is, can we get it back? And frankly, the emotional toll, is it worth it? His words stung, but I refused to be discouraged. I'd already lost so much. I couldn't afford to lose hope, too. Finally, after countless consultations and mounting rejections, I found Ms. Evelyn Reed. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a reputation for taking on difficult cases and winning. Her office was small, tucked away in a less than glamorous part of the city, but her eyes held a fierce intelligence that gave me a glimmer of hope. So, she said, after I'd laid out my story, her gaze unwavering, you want to sue your parents for the return of your college fund, which they used to fund your sister's failing business. Yes, I said, my voice firm despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. She leaned back, steepling her fingers. And you understand this will likely sever any remaining ties with your family? I understand, I replied, the words catching in my throat. It was a painful truth, but one I'd already come to terms with. All right, she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Let's do it. Ms. Reed was a force of nature. She filed the lawsuit, served my parents with the papers, and prepared for battle. She was meticulous, thorough, and utterly unfazed by my parents' attempts to paint me as the villain. The initial response from my family was a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. My mother called me, her voice a hysterical blend of tears and accusations. How could you do this, Sarah? She sobbed. We're your family. We gave you everything. You gave me nothing, I retorted, my voice cold. You took everything. You took my future. We were trying to help Chloe, she cried. She needed us. And I didn't? I asked, the bitterness in my voice palpable. Did it ever occur to you that I might need you too? That I might have dreams and aspirations? She didn't answer. She just kept crying, repeating the same tired refrain. We're a family. We're supposed to support each other. I hung up, my hands shaking. The conversation had drained me, leaving me feeling empty and exhausted. Chloe predictably took to social media, posting cryptic messages about betrayal and ungrateful siblings. Her dwindling followers offered their condolences and virtual hugs, fueling her narrative of victimhood. My brother Mike remained silent, at least publicly. But I knew he was furious. He'd always been fiercely protective of Chloe, and I had no doubt he saw me as the enemy. The legal process was slow, agonizingly slow. There were depositions, interrogatories, and endless paperwork. Ms. Reed guided me through it all, explaining each step, preparing me for the inevitable confrontations. They'll try to paint you as a spoiled brat, she warned me, as someone who's ungrateful for everything they've done for you. They'll try to make this about your character, not about the money. I know, I said, but I'm ready. I had to be. I had no other choice. Meanwhile, I had to figure out how to survive. My part-time job at a local bookstore barely covered rent and ramen noodles. My dreams of Cornell were long gone, replaced by the harsh reality of mounting debt and an uncertain future. I enrolled in a community college, taking night classes while working during the day. It wasn't the glamorous college experience I'd envisioned, but it was something. It was a way to keep moving forward, to keep learning, to keep striving for a better future. Liam was my constant support, my cheerleader, my occasional therapist. He'd listen to my rants, offer practical advice, and remind me that I wasn't alone. You're doing great, Sarah, he'd say whenever I felt overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all. You're stronger than you think. His unwavering belief in me kept me going, even when I felt like giving up. The deposition was the most brutal part. Sitting across from my parents, my brother and Chloe, with their lawyer firing questions at me, felt like a betrayal all over again. Ms. Miller, the lawyer, a slick, well-dressed man with a condescending smile, began. Isn't it true that your parents have always provided for you? That they've given you a comfortable home, a good education, and every opportunity? Yes, I admitted, my voice tight. And isn't it true that your sister Chloe has always struggled to find her path? That she's tried various ventures with varying degrees of success? Yes, I said again, knowing where he was going with this. So, wouldn't you agree that your parents were simply trying to help their struggling daughter to give her a chance to succeed? They were trying to help her at my expense. I corrected him, my voice firm. They took my money, money that was specifically set aside for my education, and gave it to her. That's not helping, that's stealing. Stealing? Chloe interjected, her voice dripping with indignation. It was a loan. I was going to pay it back. With what? I challenged her, my gaze unwavering. Your failing business? Your imaginary profits? It wasn't failing, she protested. It just needed time. Time and my money, I said, turning back to the lawyer. The money that was supposed to pay for my college education. The questioning continued for hours, a relentless barrage of accusations and insinuations. They tried to make me out to be selfish, ungrateful, and uncaring. They tried to portray Chloe as a struggling entrepreneur, a victim of circumstance, but Ms. Reed was a formidable opponent. She countered every argument, presented every piece of evidence, and slowly, meticulously dismantled their narrative. And she showed the court the documents establishing the college fund, the bank statements showing the transfer of funds to Chloe's business account, and the lack of any formal loan agreement. She also brought in witnesses, my high school guidance counselor, who testified to my academic achievements and my acceptance into Cornell, my former boss at the bookstore, who spoke to my work ethic and my financial struggles. The most painful part was seeing my parents on the stand. They looked defeated, their faces etched with a mixture of guilt and resentment. They repeated their claims that they were just trying to help Chloe, that they believed in her dream, that they thought I would understand. But their words rang hollow even to me. Their actions had spoken louder. Finally, after weeks of legal wrangling, the judge delivered her verdict. She ruled in my favor. She ordered my parents to return the full amount of the college fund, plus interest. It was a victory, a legal vindication. But it felt empty. The courtroom was silent, except for my mother's quiet sobs. My parents wouldn't even look at me. Chloe glared at me with pure hatred. Mike just shook his head, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disgust. I had won, but I had lost everything that truly mattered. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Liam. You did it, he said, his voice full of pride. You won. I won, I repeated, the words feeling hollow and meaningless. But at what cost? He squeezed my shoulder. You stood up for yourself, Sarah. You fought for what was right. That's what matters. I knew he was trying to comfort me, but his words didn't reach the deep ache in my heart. The victory felt Pyrrhic, a triumph that had left me feeling more alone than ever. The money was eventually returned to my account, but the damage was done. I couldn't go back to Cornell. The deadline had passed, the opportunity lost. I continued my studies at the community college, working my way through school, burdened by student loans that I wouldn't have needed if my parents hadn't betrayed me. I graduated with a degree in business administration, a field I'd chosen not out of passion, but out of pragmatism. I needed a stable career, a way to build a secure future, a future that was no longer clouded by the uncertainty of my family's whims. I got a job at a small startup, working my way up from an entry-level position to a management role. I was good at what I did. I was organized, efficient, and driven. But the fire, the passion, the spark that had once fueled my dreams had been extinguished. I watched from a distance as Chloe continued her downward spiral. Her organic skincare line failed, just like her candles and bath bombs. She moved from one passion project to another, each one more ridiculous and unsustainable than the last. She relied on handouts from our parents who, despite everything, continued to enable her delusions of grandeur. And then, one day, I received an email that changed everything. It was from a headhunter, a recruiter for a large venture capital firm called Zenith Innovations. They were looking for a new CEO, someone with experience in turning around struggling businesses, someone with a proven track record of success, someone like me. I hesitated at first. The idea of working for a company that specialized in acquiring and restructuring failing businesses felt ironic given my history. But the opportunity was too good to pass up. The salary was substantial, the challenges were intriguing, and the potential for growth was enormous. I went through the interview process, a grueling series of meetings and presentations. I impressed them with my knowledge, my experience, and my unwavering determination. I didn't mention my personal history, my family's betrayal, or my connection to a certain failing lifestyle brand. I got the job. I became the CEO of Zenith Innovations. The first few months were a whirlwind of activity. I immersed myself in the company's operations, learning the intricacies of the business, meeting with key personnel, and identifying potential acquisition targets. And then, one day, a file landed on my desk that made my blood run cold. It was a detailed analysis of a company called Aura Essentials, formerly known as Cloglo Essayegisa. It was Chloe's company. The report was brutal. Aura Essentials was on the verge of collapse. It was drowning in debt, its products were underperforming, and its management was incompetent. It was a prime candidate for acquisition and liquidation. I stared at the file, my mind racing. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the opportunity to exact my revenge, to make Chloe and my parents pay for what they had done. But the feeling of triumph I'd expected didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange mix of emotions, pity, regret, and a lingering sense of sadness. I could crush her. I could destroy her company, leave her with nothing, just like she had done to me. It would be easy. It would be justified. But was that what I really wanted? I spent days agonizing over the decision. I talked to Liam, seeking his advice, his perspective. "You don't have to do this, Sarah," he said. "You can walk away. You don't owe them anything." "I know," I said, "but it's not just about them. It's about closure. It's about proving to myself that I'm not a victim anymore." "You've already proven that," he said gently. "You've built an incredible life for yourself. You don't need to destroy someone else's to validate your own." His words resonated with me, but the desire for retribution was still strong. It was a battle between my head and my heart, between justice and mercy. Finally, I made my decision. I would acquire Aura Essentials, but I wouldn't liquidate it. I would restructure it. I would try to save it. It was a risky decision, one that could potentially damage my reputation and my company's bottom line, but it was the only decision I could live with. I called a meeting with my team, outlining my plan. They were skeptical, understandably so. Ms. Miller, my CFO, a sharp, pragmatic woman named Susan, said, "This company is a sinking ship. There's no way to salvage it." "I disagree," I said, my voice firm. "There's potential there. It's buried under layers of mismanagement and bad decisions, but it's there." "But why?" Susan persisted. "Why take such a risk? What's the upside?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure how much to reveal. "Let's just say I have a personal connection to this company," I finally said, "and I believe in second chances." They didn't press me further. They trusted my judgment, even if they didn't fully understand my motives. And so, the process began. I scheduled a meeting with Chloe and her lawyer, the meeting that would bring me face to face with my sister for the first time in 10 years. The meeting that would determine the fate of our company and, in a way, the fate of our fractured relationship. The meeting that would finally bring this long, painful chapter of my life to a close, one way or another. The conference room at Zenith Innovations was a stark contrast to the cluttered, essential oil-scented chaos of Chloe's office, which I'd seen in photos during the due diligence process. Polished steel, glass, and minimalist furniture spoke of efficiency and power. It was a space designed to intimidate, and judging by Chloe's pale face and trembling hands, it was working. She sat stiffly across the large conference table, her lawyer, Mr. Chen, beside her. He looked even more nervous than he had 10 years ago, his cheap suit rumpled, his tie slightly askew. Chloe, on the other hand, was a study in carefully constructed composure. She'd clearly made an effort to dress the part of a successful businesswoman, but the effect was undermined by the dark circles under her eyes and the way she fidgeted with the strap of her designer handbag, probably a knockoff, given her financial situation. "Ms. Miller," Mr. Chen began, his voice a little shaky, "we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We understand Zenith Innovations is considering acquiring Aura Essentials." I held up a hand, silencing him. Let's be clear, Mr. Chen. We're considering acquiring your assets. Your company, as it currently stands, is worthless. Chloe flinched, but she didn't speak. We've reviewed your financials, I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. Your debts are staggering, your sales are plummeting, and your brand reputation is, well, let's just say it's not exactly stellar. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. We We've had some challenges, certainly, but we believe there's still significant potential in the brand. With the right investment, the right guidance, the right miracle, I corrected him, a hint of sarcasm creeping into my voice. Mr. Chen, I'm not in the business of performing miracles. I'm in the business of making smart investments, and Aura Essentials in its current state is anything but. I paused, letting my words sink in. Then I turned my attention to Chloe. Ms. Thompson, I said, deliberately using her last name. It's been a long time. She finally met my gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and, was it recognition? Sarah? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The carefully constructed facade crumbled, replaced by a look of utter shock and disbelief. I nodded, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. Surprised. But how? She stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Hard work, I replied, the word echoing the explanation I'd given her 10 years ago. Dedication, perseverance, qualities that seem to be lacking in your entrepreneurial endeavors. The color drained from her face. She looked like she was about to be sick. Mr. Chen, bless his clueless heart, finally seemed to realize that something was amiss. Ms. Miller, Ms. Thompson, do you know each other? We're sisters, I said, the word tasting strange on my tongue. Estranged sisters. Sisters? Mr. Chen looked from me to Chloe, his confusion evident. But I don't understand. It's a long story, Mr. Chen, I said, cutting him off, and one that's not relevant to our current discussion. I turned back to Chloe, my expression softening slightly. The anger, the bitterness, the desire for revenge, it was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was tempered by a sense of pity. She looked so lost, so defeated. Chloe, I said, my voice gentler now, I'm not going to lie to you. Your company is in dire straits. You're on the verge of bankruptcy. You have no leverage. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I know, she whispered. I don't know what to do. I'm going to make you an offer, I said. It's not the offer you were hoping for, but it's the only offer you're going to get. I outlined my plan. Zenith Innovations would acquire Aura Essentials assets, its remaining inventory, its customer list, its intellectual property, which, frankly, wasn't worth much. In return, Chloe would receive a small severance package, enough to cover her immediate living expenses and give her a fresh start. A fresh start? She repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. After everything? After everything, I confirmed. I'm not doing this for you, Chloe. I'm doing this for me. I need to move on, and I can't do that with this unfinished business hanging over my head. It was a lie, partially. I was doing it for her, too. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite the years of resentment, I couldn't bring myself to completely destroy her. Maybe it was the remnants of a sisterly bond, however frayed and damaged. Maybe it was simply a sense of basic human decency. Whatever it was, I couldn't do it. But the company, she said, her voice trembling. My dream? Your dream was built on a foundation of lies and stolen money, Chloe, I said, my voice hardening again. It was never sustainable. It was never real. She flinched, but she didn't argue. She knew it was true. Take the offer, Chloe, I said. It's the best you're going to get. It's a chance to start over, to build something real, something honest. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. Why are you doing this, Sarah? After everything. Why are you helping me? I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Because I'm not you, Chloe, I said. And I'm not our parents. I believe in hard work, in earning your success, in taking responsibility for your actions. And I believe in second chances, even for people who don't deserve them. She didn't reply, she just stared at me, her expression a mixture of gratitude, shame, and disbelief. Mr. Chen, sensing the shift in the conversation, cleared his throat. Ms. Miller, if I may, the terms of the severance package. We spent the next hour hammering out the details, negotiating the numbers, finalizing the paperwork. Chloe remained silent throughout the process, her gaze fixed on the table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Finally, the documents were signed. The deal was done. Aura Essentials was no more. Chloe was free. As she stood up to leave, she paused, turning back to me. "Thank you, Sarah," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I I don't know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "Just try to do better this time." She nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Then, she turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the bittersweet taste of a victory that felt more like a surrender. I spent the next few weeks overseeing the integration of Aura Essentials' remaining assets into Zenith Innovations. Most of the inventory was liquidated, the customer list was merged with our existing database, and the intellectual property was filed away, unlikely to ever see the light of day. It was a ruthless, efficient process, a stark reminder of the cutthroat nature of the business world. But I found myself taking a strange satisfaction in it. It was a way to exorcise the demons of the past, to dismantle the physical manifestation of Chloe's failures, and, in a way, my own. One evening, I received a call from my mother. I hadn't spoken to her since that brief, painful conversation after the acquisition. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Sarah?" Her voice was hesitant, strained. "It's Mom." "I know," I said, my voice neutral. I I wanted to talk to you about Chloe." I sighed. "What about her?" She's doing better," Mom said. "She got a job at a department store, selling cosmetics." I couldn't help but smile, a small, ironic smile. From lifestyle guru to department store sales associate, it was a steep fall. "That's good," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. And she's seeing someone," Mom continued. "A nice young man. He he seems good for her." "I'm glad," I said, and to my surprise, I meant it. Maybe, just maybe, Chloe would finally find some stability, some happiness, away from the pressure of her self-imposed expectations and our parents' enabling. "Sarah," Mom said, her voice breaking. I I know we made mistakes, terrible mistakes. We we were so focused on Chloe, on her potential, that we neglected you. We hurt you. And I'm so sorry." The apology, so long overdue, caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say. It's okay, Mom," I finally managed to say, the words feeling awkward and inadequate. "It's not okay," she insisted. "It's not okay at all, but I hope someday you can forgive us. Forgive me." I I don't know, Mom," I said honestly. "It's going to take time." "I understand," she said softly. "Take all the time you need." We talked for a few more minutes, a stilted, awkward conversation filled with long silences and unspoken emotions. But it was a start, a small crack in the wall that had separated us for so long. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring out the window at the city lights. The conversation had stirred up a lot of emotions, a lot of memories, but it had also brought a sense of peace. The anger, the bitterness, the resentment, it was still there, but it was fading. It was being replaced by something else, something softer, something more forgiving. I realized that I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see Chloe suffer. I just needed to move on, to build my own life, my own happiness, independent of my family and their mistakes. And I was doing that. I had a successful career, a supportive friend, and a future that was finally truly my own. I looked around my office at the symbols of my success, at the evidence of my hard work and determination. I had come a long way from that scared, heartbroken teenager who had walked out of her parents' house with nothing but a burning anger and a shattered dream. I had rebuilt. I had thrived. I had become the CEO of the company that ruined my sister, but in doing so, I had also saved myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. The scars remained, of course, the betrayal, the loss, the years of struggle. Those things would always be a part of me, but they didn't define me. They didn't control me. I had learned a valuable lesson, a painful lesson, but a valuable one nonetheless. Family wasn't about blind loyalty or unconditional support. It was about respect, about honesty, about fairness. And sometimes, the most loving thing you could do for your family was to walk away. I had found my own family, my chosen family, in Liam and in the people I'd surrounded myself with at Zenith Innovations. People who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. People who supported my dreams, not my sister's. And as I looked out at the city lights, I knew that I was finally home. Not in a physical place, but in a state of mind. A place of peace, of acceptance, of forgiveness. A place where I could finally be myself. The future was still uncertain, of course. Life always is. But I was no longer afraid. I had faced my demons, I had overcome my challenges, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had taken back my life. And that was all that mattered. The college fund was a distant memory, a symbol of a past that no longer defined me. I had built something far greater, something far more meaningful. I had built a future, and it was mine, all mine. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had finally arrived, and the view from the top was breathtaking, even if it was a view I had never expected to see. Even if it was a view that came at a great cost, it was my view, and that made all the difference.